My phone pinged as I was signing Milo out of daycare. I glanced at the screen, expecting a throwaway note from my husband about pasta or groceries. Instead, 3 sentences detonated like a silent bomb. Moving to Spain with Harper. I've transferred our savings to my private account. Good luck paying rent. My pen froze mid-signature. The looping end stuttered into a jagged line. Milo tugged at my sleeve, blissfully unaware that our life had just been kicked off its axis. Mommy, did you bring my dinosaur snacks today? I reshaped my face into something resembling a smile, finished the form, and texted back the only 3 words I could trust not to crack. Thanks for the update. Harper, his administrative assistant. Our savings, 8 years of discipline, coupons, and saying no to trips we couldn't afford. Rent 3 days away. My name is Rowan Hale, 37, mother to a 4-year-old who believes T-Rex gummies can fix anything, and apparently soon-to-be ex-wife of Caleb Hale, who just detonated our marriage via text as carelessly as if he were canceling a dinner reservation. What I wanted was embarrassingly modest. Stability for my son, the dignity of solvency, a life not perpetually sabotaged by Caleb's whims. What stood between me and that fragile sanity was the immediate arithmetic of survival. How to keep a roof over our heads when our nest egg had been pillaged by the man who vowed to protect us. Where's Daddy? Milo chirped as we walked to the car. His small hand nested in mine. Is he making spaghetti tonight? Daddy's on a trip, I said, the lie landing softly between us. We'll have pizza instead. At home, I slid Milo in front of his favorite cartoon and dialed the bank with a calm I did not feel. A polite representative confirmed the nightmare with breezy professionalism. Yes, Caleb had transferred the entire balance, $42,731, from our joint savings into an account under his name only. Because his name had been on the joint account, there was nothing they could do. A heist with the door held open by the system itself. I opened our checking account, clinging to hope like a life raft. Balance, $347.12. Rent due, $2,200. Numbers that jeered. My phone lit up again. Caleb's mother, Margot. Rowan, what have you done? She demanded by way of greeting. Caleb says you're refusing to let him see Milo. What? I blinked. He just told me he's moving to Spain. He wiped out our accounts. Don't lie to me. Her voice turned glass-edged. He showed me your messages. You're extorting him, threatening to withhold Milo unless he pays more alimony. I raised a better son than that, and he won't be bullied. As Margot's accusations rat-a-tatted through the receiver, a slick realization slid home. Caleb wasn't just vanishing. He was stage-managing a narrative where I wore the horns and carried the pitchfork. And Margot? She'd already purchased front-row tickets and popcorn. This stopped being about scraping together rent. It became about truth, about justice, about what kind of world my son would inherit if lies could bulldoze reality. We met 9 years ago at a publishing conference in New York. I was a hungry editor at Astra Press. He was the golden-tongued marketing guy at a rival house. Caleb pursued me with a blitz of charm, handwritten notes slid beneath cafe cups, surprise museum tickets, rooftop dinners under string lights that made the city look kind. 6 months later, we married in a small ceremony lining Lake Michigan with our optimism. We moved to Chicago for my promotion to senior editor. He stepped into a sleek marketing role. We bought a modest condo, took budget flights, did Sunday crosswords and future planning like it was a hobby. When Milo arrived 4 years ago, we recalibrated. I shifted to freelance editing to anchor our days around naps and snack time. Caleb's paycheck became the pillar. That's also when the hairline cracks appeared. Unexplained charges popped on our card like confetti. He started staying late. To make up for your reduced income. Margot drifted closer, a cloud that always shaded me. Milo needs a firmer hand, she'd declare, while Caleb stared at the carpet and said nothing. Rowan is too soft. 2 years ago, Caleb convinced me to sell our condo. We'll roll the equity into my friend's startup, he'd promised, eyes shining with the evangelism of a man who loves the sound of his own certainty. 8 months later, the startup folded like wet cardboard. Market volatility, he said with a shrug that made me want to throw dishes. When I broached going back full-time, he insisted. Not necessary. Milo needs you at home. Trust me. I've got everything under control. I wanted to believe him. I did. Even when I found dinner receipts from nights he was allegedly in the trenches, and watched him start treating his phone like a holy relic, face down, carried to the bathroom, password changed, I filed the doubts in the back drawer labeled "Don't blow up your life over a hunch." 3 months ago, he announced a promotion that meant occasional international travel. Around the same time he rhapsodized about Harper, the miracle assistant who could organize chaos. Last week I found a Barcelona travel guide jammed in his desk. He laughed it off. Might open a European office someday. Just doing research. His smile trembled. His eyes didn't stick to mine. That guide should have been a flashing siren. I muted it like I always did. The morning after his nuclear text, I dropped Milo at daycare and drove to Caleb's office. He couldn't just evaporate. He wouldn't. The receptionist, all crisp blazer and tight smile, shifted when I asked for him. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Hale," she said, eyes skittering. "Caleb no longer works here. He resigned last week." Last week. My voice sounded like it came from a speaker in the ceiling. "He was here Monday." "I shouldn't discuss personnel matters," she fumbled. "He submitted his resignation 2 weeks ago. Yesterday was his last day." 2 weeks. While I was labeling snack bags and touring preschools, he was orchestrating an exit so clean you could serve dinner on it. In the dim of the parking garage, I called Caleb's closest friend, Colin. "You knew," I said, the words arriving before the thought. A long exhale. "He made me promise. Said he needed a clean break." A clean break from his child? My control frayed. From 8 years of marriage? "I told him it was wrong," Colin said, voice suddenly small. "But Harper, she makes him happy. He said you and Milo would be better off without him dragging you down." The phrase sliced me open even as I recognized its ridiculousness. "Did he tell you he emptied our accounts?" Silence stretched then. "Christ, Rowan. I didn't know he'd go that far." I drove home on autopilot and found a certified letter waiting like a snake in a gift box. A divorce petition filed a week earlier. Irreconcilable differences. A Barcelona address listed for Caleb. A request that all parental rights and obligations remain with the mother. No visitation, no custody, an official shrug. He was abandoning his son and sculpting a story where I kept them apart. A note from Caleb's lawyer, varnished smug. "Mr. Hale indicates you have substantial savings to cover your needs during this transition. He will not be providing spousal or child support." I sat on the couch with court papers splayed like an autopsy. The man I married, or the man I convinced myself he was, had plotted an exit that siphoned our funds and painted me as a grasping villain. My phone buzzed again. "Landed in Barcelona. Don't contact me. My lawyer will handle everything." Shot curdled into a quiet, surgical anger. For Milo's sake, I needed to move like a general. 1. Secure housing before the first of the month. 2. Document everything. 3. Find a lawyer who knew how to turn facts into orders. For the first time since the text, I cried fast, hard cleansing. Not for the marriage already rotting from the inside, but for the scale of the battlefield. When the tears stopped, one thought remained crystalline. Caleb had underestimated me. He always had. 3 days later I sat across from Lydia Chan, a divorce attorney with a tidy office and eyes that missed nothing. She flipped through my documents like a conductor glimpsing a score. "What your husband did is vile," she said evenly. "But the law's a blunt instrument. Because his name was on the joint account, the transfer isn't strictly illegal. The good news? Judges loathe this behavior. We can file for emergency child support and try to freeze remaining assets. What I need is proof he's working or about to work. Income while dodging responsibility." I nodded, my mind already rifling through drawers and laptops. Screenshots of his texts. Bank statements showing the midnight extraction. The certified petition. But how to prove his employment from an ocean away? That night, after my parents in Michigan promised to wire enough to cover rent. "We'll be there tomorrow," my mom said, steel threaded through gentleness. I tucked Milo into bed and went scavenger hunting. Caleb's desk coughed up tax returns, old warranties, a mountain of dust, and then jackpot. A sealed birthday card addressed to Margot. I hesitated, then slid it open with a fingernail. A note fell out, his slanted handwriting grinning up at me. "Mom, thanks for helping with the Barcelona apartment deposit. Harper and I can't wait to show you our new place in May. Couldn't have done it without you. Caleb. Dated 3 months ago. Right around the promotion. Margot hadn't just known, she'd bankrolled the new life. I photographed everything and kept digging. On our shared computer, I opened his email client. Caleb had always recycled passwords like a lazy magician. Milo's birth date plus our anniversary, rotated ad nauseum. I tried the obvious combination. The account blinked open. In drafts, the smoking gun. An unsent email to Harper with a shiny resume attached listing a new role at Solstice Global Barcelona. Start date, 2 days after his text. He'd scheduled my destruction between onboarding meetings. I forwarded every scrap to Lydia. She called within the hour, voice steady but sparking. This is what we needed. We'll file for emergency orders first thing, child support, asset freezes, maybe even an order to return to jurisdiction. Buckle up. That night, Caleb's lawyer lobbed an insult disguised as a lifeline. A $5,000 full settlement of all claims. They're testing your desperation, Lydia said, scanning it. Do not bite. Caleb followed with a direct message oozing condescension. Take the settlement, Rowan. You won't get more. Fighting will drain what little I've graciously offered. Be reasonable for once. Reasonable. I saved the message and said nothing. A silence that felt like sharpening a blade. 2 days later, we had a date for an emergency hearing. I arrived early with Lydia, our file thick enough to bruise. As we waited in the corridor, a man in an expensive suit glided out, the kind of lawyer who believed cufflinks were a personality. Mrs. Hale, he nodded. Aaron Hoffman, counsel for Mr. Hale. Before I could inhale, a familiar perfume curdled the air. Margot, immaculate and icy, materialized at his shoulder. You should be ashamed, she hissed, ignoring Lydia's raised palm. Extorting my son after you drove him away. Since you're here, Lydia said smoothly, we'll be calling you as a witness regarding your financial support of your son's abandonment. Margot's face barely flinched, but a hairline crack appeared in her poise. I have no idea what you're talking about. We filed into the courtroom. The judge listened, face carved from neutrality, as Lydia built the story brick by brick. The vanished money, the Barcelona job, the text, the paper trail. Caleb's lawyer tried to alchemize abandonment into prudence. The judge wasn't buying. Emergency support granted. Partial asset return ordered. It felt like oxygen after weeks underwater. And yet, as we shuffled out, unease prickled under my victory. Why had Margot flown to Chicago for what should have been a routine hearing? The answer rang the next morning from an international number. Is this Rowan Hale? A woman asked, accent lilting. Sofia Andrade, HR Director at Solstice Global Barcelona. I'm calling about your husband. My heart slammed. Yes. We received your email regarding Mr. Hale's situation. Company policy requires disclosure of legal matters. I wanted to inform you he no longer works for Solstice. He was terminated yesterday. I didn't send any email, I said flatly. A pause radiated down the line. Someone using your name did. They attached personal documents and threatened legal action if we continued employing him. The room tilted. Those documents, some I'd only just assembled for Lydia. My apartment had remained untouched. Only one person had visited in that window, armed with a smile and casseroles and a talent for trespassing boundaries. Margot. I hung up with Sophia and stared at the wall until the paint seemed to hum. Those documents could only have come from my apartment. And the only person who'd recently hovered in my kitchen, delivering sympathy like a poisoned truffle, was Margot. I called Lydia. She impersonated you, Lydia said, already in motion. That's identity fraud and interference with the court order. We'll file an emergency motion and report it. Get Sophia to forward the email and headers. Minutes later, the forged message slid into my inbox. My name on it, my voice counterfeited, our private paperwork attached like trophies. I forwarded everything to Lydia, then to the detective who took the police report. The officer's pen scratched steadily as if none of this were extraordinary. Grandmother sabotages son's job by pretending to be daughter-in-law, film at 11. Caleb called for the first time since Spain. He didn't bother with greetings. You vindictive, he snarled. You got me fired after everything I offered you. It wasn't me, I said, cold settling over hot. It was your mother. Absurd. But I could hear it, the small tremor of doubt. Look at the attachments Solstice received. Those lived in my apartment until your mother dropped by last week. Silence stretched thin as wire. I'll call you back. 10 minutes later an email arrived from Caleb. A panic dump of screenshots between him and Margot. My stomach turned as I scrolled. Once you're established in Spain, we'll move for full custody, Margot had typed 3 months ago. With Rowan's history after Milo's birth, we can position her as unstable. My postpartum depression. Months of therapy I clawed through with sunlight walks and whispered prayers, weaponized into a bullet point. The room contracted until only Milo's dinosaur nightlight felt real. Lydia's voice cut through the fog. We add conspiracy to the filings and submit the texts. This helps us. It shows intent. But he still has the money, I said, anger cooling to strategy. We need the trail. I called Colin. I need details, I said. For Milo. Alongside. He mentioned an account in the Caymans, First Caribbean. Said Margot set it up for tax efficiency. I didn't think he'd do this to you. To Milo. It wasn't much, but it was a compass. I sat at our shared computer and stared at the login screen for Caleb's cloud storage. He was a creature of lazy habit. Milo's birthday plus our anniversary, always in some smug permutation. My fingers moved before I could talk myself out of it. The drive opened. Folders stacked like a blueprint for betrayal / exit / Barcelona / custody strategy / FCIB / Inside, screenshots of wire confirmations, emails with a boutique banker who thanked him for utilizing discreet services, a PDF titled Custody Strategy Docs that read like a villain's pitch deck, and messages with Margot discussing optics and jurisdictional complications, as if my son were a filing cabinet. I forwarded everything to Lydia. This is dynamite, she said, voice taut with contained triumph. We'll petition to freeze the Cayman account immediately and request international assistance. Be prepared. Their side will scream hacking. We argue shared marital device, routine access, exigent circumstances. By the next afternoon, the judge signed an order to freeze the FCIB funds pending review. Predictably, Caleb's attorney filed a counter. Unlawful access, spousal snooping, inadmissible evidence. The legal machinery began to grind, and for the first time since the text bomb, it was grinding in my direction. Then Harper called. Rowan, she said, voice shorn of its assistant chirp. We need to talk. I'm not your confessor. This isn't about confession, she said. It's about safety. Caleb is unraveling. He's talking about flying back to fix you. It scared me. He's never been violent, I said, though the certainty tasted stale. People change when walls close in, she whispered. And he lied to me too. When the Cayman account froze, he said we'd be fine. He has another stash. One Margot doesn't know about. Every instinct told me to hang up. Another instinct, the mother wolf one, held my hand in place. Where? Liechtenstein. He called it our parachute. If I give you proof, I want protection. Immunity. I won't be the one in handcuffs for his choices. I put her on hold and dialed Lydia. Offer a cooperation agreement, Lydia said. No promises beyond prosecutorial discretion, but we'll put it in writing and submit her sworn statement. If she's got real documents, we can move today. Harper emailed within the hour. Bank statements from a Liechtenstein private bank, transfers mapped like arteries, balances that made my breath skip. Over $200,000 parked in a jurisdiction he thought would keep me out and him safe. Attached. A notarized statement detailing Caleb's timeline, the apartment deposit Margot funded, and their fresh start without baggage script. Baggage meaning my child. Lydia moved like weather. We filed for an emergency restraining order and an additional freeze. She flagged Caleb on the airline and with airport police under the court's protective order. At 6:11 p.m. Harper texted. He booked the flight. Leaves Barcelona in 2 hours. One way. I stared at Milo's sleeping face and felt two currents run through me. Terror and something brighter, harder. We'd been playing Caleb's game on Caleb's board. Tonight we flipped it. When my phone finally vibrated again, it was an unknown U.S. number, and a voice that sounded like a door slamming. Miss Hale? This is Officer Daniels at O'Hare. We have Mr. Hale in secondary screening. He's been served with your order. I exhaled so slowly it felt like learning to breathe. Caleb called from the airport holding room. Fury tamped under a thin lid. What the hell is this, Rowan? I came back to talk like adults. With a one-way ticket and no hotel reservation, I said. Court is at 9 a.m. I suggest you find counsel. You think you've won? He hissed. You've just made me dangerous. No, I said, my voice steadier than my hands. You made yourself irrelevant. By 9 a.m. the courtroom felt refrigerated. Fluorescence, varnish, the metal clink of a bailiff's pen. Caleb shuffled in looking like he'd slept in a hurricane, jaw tight, tie crooked. Margot swept behind him, pearls neat, eyes sharp. Lydia slid our binder onto counsel table like a brick of consequence. We went first. Lydia didn't waste adjectives. She stacked facts. Exhibit A. Caleb's text detonating the marriage and the bank sweep. Exhibit B. Bank statements marking $42,731 drained to his sole account and $347.12 left to feed a child. Exhibit C. Drafted resume and offer letter from Solstice Global Barcelona. Start date 2 days after his disappearing act. Exhibit D. Email from HR Director Sofia Andrade confirming his termination. And the forged message sent from me. Exhibit E. Screenshots of Margot's messages plotting the optics of painting me unstable to pry Milo away. Exhibit F. FCB Cayman wires, Liechtenstein statements, transfers braided like a rope around his intent. Exhibit to Harper's sworn declaration, notarized, detailing dates, amounts, and the plan to ditch baggage. I, my son. Caleb's attorney tried theatrics. Your Honor, my client was safeguarding marital assets from a spouse threatening. The judge lifted a palm. I've read the record, counsel. Don't insult this court with euphemisms. Safeguarding is not the word for abandoning your family and secreting funds offshore. When Lydia introduced the custody strategy at docs, the judge's expression went from granite to glacial. Mr. Hale, you and your mother discussed exploiting Ms. Hale's postpartum depression? Caleb's mouth opened and closed. Margot's pearl hand twitched. We request, Lydia said, voice even, immediate return of all marital assets, a comprehensive freeze, a forensic accounting, full legal and physical custody to my client, supervised visitation only, surrender of Mr. Hale's passport as a flight risk measure, and referral for investigation into identity fraud and conspiracy. Caleb's lawyer sputtered about illegally obtained evidence. Lydia didn't blink. Shared marital device, routine access, exigent circumstances to prevent dissipation of assets. The equities favor the child. The law favors the truth. The judge leaned forward. Mr. Hale, this court is not a laundromat for your moral stains. He rapped his gavel once, clean as a verdict. Orders are as follows. All identified accounts, domestic, Cayman, Liechtenstein, frozen under court supervision. Immediate return of liquid funds to a trust for the benefit of the minor child. Temporary sole custody to Ms. Hale, supervised visitation at the discretion of the guardian ad litem, surrender of passport to the clerk, and referral of Ms. Hale's identity fraud allegation and conspiracy evidence to the state's attorney. It was comprehensive. It was surgical. It was justice with receipts. Caleb stared at me like he just discovered gravity was not negotiable. Margot tried to hold my gaze and failed. Something in her posture collapsed, small and private. Out in the hall she cornered me anyway. You've humiliated our family. No, I said. You did that when you forged my name and tried to rewrite my child's future. Optics, Margot. They're not on your side anymore. The weeks that followed mapped themselves with bureaucratic precision. Subpoenas, accountings, interviews. The forensic team traced not only our missing funds but also a dusty constellation of efficiency shelters Margot had been nursing for years. The IRS did not share her appreciation for creative savings. The state's attorney charged her with identity fraud and interference with the court order. She pled to a reduced count and community service, which did not pair well with country club luncheons. Her friends learned to pronounce mugshot. Caleb found the city smaller than his reputation. The public case filings read like a moral cautionary tale. Hiring managers did not enjoy those genres. He cycled through temp gigs in defiance, then into something like deflation. The guardian ad litem arranged 2 supervised visits. Caleb arrived late to one, didn't show to the other. Milo played with a puzzle and asked when the lady with the stickers would come back. He meant the supervisor. The divorce finalized like the closing of a heavy door. Terms: full custody to me. Supervised visitation available should Caleb stabilize. Restoration of marital assets plus fees. Child support indexed to his future income with a floor that punished voluntary underemployment. The court's language was crisp. Its subtext was simpler. Choices have consequences. 6 months after the text that tried to bury me, Milo and I moved into a sunlit 2-bedroom with just enough space for Joy to stretch. I bought him a dinosaur duvet set. He selected with the solemnity of a treaty. On move-in night, he lay on his new bed and pressed a plastic T-Rex to my cheek. "Is Daddy coming here?" he asked, not accusing, just curious. "I don't know," I said, because honesty is the only thing I can afford never to run out of. "But we're going to be okay either way." "Because we have pizza?" I smiled. "Because we have us." I returned to full-time editing with a publisher that believes in flexible hours and parents who are also professionals. I proofread in the early mornings while Milo narrates dinosaur epics under the table. Sometimes sadness taps me on the shoulder when I'm not looking. I make it tea, let it talk, and send it on its way. As for Harper, she took her immunity and a one-way flight back to Spain, a suitcase of new boundaries in tow. Her last message: "I'm sorry. It was never supposed to get this dark." I didn't reply. Some fires you smother by starving them of oxygen. Margot keeps her distance. Rumor has it she doesn't recall why community service vests are one-size-fits-nobody. Caleb filed a motion months later, asking to modify visitation. The judge set conditions: therapy, steady work, proof of compliance. Paperwork arrived. Proof did not. Every so often I find the screenshot, "Good luck paying rent," and I let it sit on my phone a full 10 seconds before deleting it again. It used to make my lungs burn. Now it reads like an opening line I refuse to let be the ending. Here is the ending I chose. A small boy in a dinosaur room. A woman who knows the shape of her own spine. A life rebuilt not from spite but from stubborn daily love. Stability, dignity, a roof we didn't beg for. Paid with recovered funds and a currency Caleb will never carry. Accountability. He thought he'd left me with a bill. He left me with a story, and I paid it forward in full.